Last time we explored 10 abandoned cities in the US, and you loved it. But this time we're going even deeper, literally. Beneath America's streets, hidden tunnels, and underground cities tell stories of survival secrecy and forgotten history. From Prohibition speakeasies to Cold War bunkers, we're uncovering what's been hiding beneath our feet all along. But why were these places abandoned? What secrets still remain? Could some of them still be accessible today? And most importantly, are you ready to explore them with us? Ellinwood is a small town in Kansas with a hidden history underground. In the 1870s, German immigrants built tunnels that connected places like saloons, barbershops, and bathhouses. These tunnels made it easy for people to move between shops while staying warm during cold winters. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, the tunnels were full of life. Men gathered in saloons to drink and talk while barbers like William Young cut hair and even gave small medical treatments. Travelers could stop at bathhouses to wash up, and shops like harness stores kept the town running. But everything changed in 1920 when Prohibition began banning alcohol. The tunnels took on a new purpose, turning into secret bars called speakeasies, where people could drink in hiding. For years, the underground passageways stayed busy, but once Prohibition ended in 1933, the need for the tunnels faded. Shops closed, and over time, people forgot they were even there. That changed in 1979 when a woman named Adriana Durolf rediscovered the tunnels. Wanting to share their history, she began giving tours in 1981. Although some tunnels were lost, others were saved, and today, the Ellinwood Underground City Foundation works to protect them. Visitors can explore these hidden passageways, step into the past, and hear the fascinating stories of the world beneath Ellinwood streets. Between 1900 and 1937, Pendleton replaced its wooden buildings with brick. They created basements that were connected by underground sidewalks and tunnels. When the railroad came to Pendleton in the 1880s, the underground city grew even bigger. Chinese workers who had built the railroads faced a lot of unfair treatment in the town above, so they found safety underground. They opened laundries and medicine shops, and had secret rooms where they could play games like mahjong or smoke opium without being bothered. The underground wasn't just for Chinese immigrants, though. Basque shepherds, Native Americans from the Umatilla tribe, and European settlers all used these hidden spaces. There were even secret businesses like brothels, saloons, and gambling places where people went to have fun away from judging eyes. The underground became super important during the 1920s when alcohol was against the law. Secret bars called speakeasies operated beneath the streets with entrances that were hard to find. Even the police who were supposed to stop these places sometimes took money to look the other way. While the regular streets of Pendleton were busy with normal shops, and while trading, the underground was buzzing with exciting and sometimes dangerous activities. These tunnels stayed hidden for years until the 1980s when workers fixing downtown streets found holes that led to this forgotten world. When they investigated, they found old Chinese medicine bottles, gambling chips, and secret hiding spots where illegal alcohol was once kept. In 2022, scans confirmed that unexplored sections still remain. Do you know that one man spent almost his whole life digging a tunnel through a mountain all by himself? And his name was William Burro Schmidt. In 1902, he started digging a tunnel through Copper Mountain in California. He wanted to make a shortcut to transport copper, or instead of taking the dangerous 13-mile journey over the mountain. By the time he finished 38 years later, in 1938, nobody needed the tunnel anymore. And guess what? He never even used it for mining. Even though the tunnel wasn't useful anymore, Schmidt kept digging. In 1920, he moved his home closer to the tunnel entrance so he could work on it more. Some people think he was just really stubborn and didn't want to quit. Others believe he became obsessed with finishing the tunnel like it was the most important thing in his life. Years after Schmidt stopped digging, researchers started studying his tunnel and the remains of his little home. They found his old tools and personal belongings near his cabin, which helped them learn about how he lived. In 2019, earthquakes caused some rocks to fall near the tunnel entrance, but most of it stayed strong. In 1963, it became a California historical landmark and is protected by the government. The tunnel is about half a mile long, and you can still walk through most of it, though some parts are narrow and you have to duck down. Some people have written graffiti on the walls, but volunteers work hard to clean it up. If you visit, don't forget your flashlight. It's super dark inside. New research suggests he might have been sad about losing his sister, and digging helped him feel better. While many people once thought his tunnel was pointless today, it shows us how strong one person can be. There's a secret tunnel system under a busy circle in Washington, D.C., and it's called the DuPont Underground. Back in 1949, hundreds of workers, including many Black Americans, dug these tunnels and put down the tracks. By 1962, the last streetcar made its final trip, and the tunnels were left empty. During the 1970s Cold War, the government secretly converted the tunnels into a fallout shelter for 2,000 people, adding blast doors, air filters, and emergency food. Fearing public panic, they kept its existence hidden. The shelter was for government officials, not regular citizens. In 2022, workers found a sealed room with 1970s survival manuals, a Geiger counter, and a decades-old mural. These artifacts are now part of exhibits showcasing Cold War history. Even though the DuPont Underground is now popular, it still has problems to solve. Some people who live nearby worry that making it an art space might make the neighborhood too expensive for regular families. In 2023, scientists made an even more amazing discovery. Archaeologists from Howard University found pieces of pottery and bullets from the Civil War era. These items suggest that this area might have once been part of the Underground Railroad, where enslaved people traveled to find freedom. In 2024, the area outside the tunnel hosted the DC Holiday Market, bringing food, crafts, and entertainment. Once a streetcar hub and fallout shelter, DuPont Underground continues to evolve as a vibrant part of city life. Back in 1912, the Cumberland and Pennsylvania Railroad built Stickpile Tunnel to help move coal from mines to big cities. Coal was super important back then because it powered factories and helped cities grow bigger and stronger. The 800-foot tunnel through Sidling Hill Ridge made coal transport much easier. The tunnel wasn't built by machines like we might use today. It was built by real people who had really dangerous jobs. They used dynamite to blast through the solid rock and worked super long hours for very little money. The work was so dangerous that in 1911, before the tunnel was even finished, a cave-in killed 3 workers. Stickpile Tunnel didn't just help the coal industry. It helped the whole town of Green Ridge grow. Trains passing through the tunnel also carried apples from the Mertens family's orchards, which later became Green Ridge State Forest. By 1975, trucks replaced trains, and the last train through Stickpile Tunnel was a maintenance crew who left a farewell message on the wall. In 1980, the National Park Service incorporated the tunnel into the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal National Historical Park. The Mosier Twin Tunnels were built between 1913 and 1921 as part of the historic Columbia River Highway. It was designed to highlight the beauty of the Columbia River Gorge. The tunnels were carved through 400,000-year-old rock. Italian immigrants and local workers used dynamite and hand tools. Lancaster ensured the tunnels were both functional and beautiful, featuring arched entrances and window-like cutouts with stunning river views. Despite their early success, the tunnels were eventually abandoned after Interstate 84 opened in the 1950s. The Mosier Twin Tunnels were blocked by a rockfall in 1966 and left overgrown for decades. In the late 1980s, historian Mildred Kuiper and engineer Robert Hadlow led efforts to restore them. Stabilization required rock bolts, steel supports, and preserving original features. Crews uncovered relics like rail spikes, a rusted Model T part, and 1921 graffiti. After a $6.5 million restoration, the tunnels reopened in 2000 as a pedestrian and bike path. In 2021, Oregon Parks installed panels honoring indigenous history, while scientists use LiDAR to monitor rock stability. Archaeologists continue uncovering details about the workers who built them, ensuring their stories endure. The Belmont Tunnel in Dawes County, Nebraska, is an abandoned piece of history. Built between 1910 and 1912, it was once part of a busy railroad connecting Nebraska's farmlands to the Black Hills of South Dakota. Trains carried cattle, timber, and sugar beets through this tunnel, helping small towns grow. But by 1942, the tunnel was no longer needed, and it was sealed off, leaving behind a dark, empty passage that still stands today. The camps where the workers lived weren't much safer. Poor sanitation led to sickness. Protests over unpaid wages led to replacements, and legends persist of workers buried in collapses. Locals still report eerie sounds and shadows in the tunnel. Train traffic through the Belmont Tunnel peaked in the early 1900s. At one point, a serious accident in 1917 caused part of the tunnel to collapse, leading to major repairs. Later in 1942, the railroad decided to reroute trains and sealed the tunnel with dynamite, leaving it to decay. Over the years, it became a forgotten place, hidden by time and nature. Even though trains stopped running, the tunnel has never been completely empty. During the Great Depression, travelers looking for shelter left graffiti on the walls. More recently, explorers and historians have rediscovered its secrets. In 2021, researchers used special scanning technology to study the tunnel. They found old tools, broken pieces of dishes, and even a worker's ledger from 1912 listing names of the people who built it. In 2023, another group discovered faded graffiti from hobos who passed through nearly a century ago. In 1869, a Welsh immigrant named William Ajax built an underground store in Rush Valley, Utah. At the time, the area was booming with miners searching for silver, and Ajax sought a chance to create a supply store that could survive the harsh desert conditions. Instead of building above ground, he dug deep into the earth, carving out a store that stayed cool in the summer and warm in the winter. The store sold supplies like dynamite, pickaxes, and food, but also served as a gathering spot for miners. Ajax was fair, allowing credit during tough winters. He reportedly hired Pony Express riders and Shoshone laborers, and once used the store's design to fend off outlaws. After Ajax died in 1898, his son David took over the store, but hard times soon followed. The price of silver dropped, and a severe drought in 1902 made it difficult for people to survive in the valley. By 1910, the store was abandoned, and the Ajax family moved to Salt Lake City, where some of their descendants still live today. In 2018, researchers used ground-penetrating radar to locate the remains of the underground store, revealing storage and living chambers. Archaeologists later uncovered preserved jars of miners' boots and a hidden compartment with 1800s coins, suggesting Ajax safeguarded miners' money. A rusted Ajax and Son sign and a Welsh ledger confirmed his heritage. Now the faint depression, marked by a plaque at the site, may gain historic recognition thanks to Ajax's great-granddaughter, Eleanor Ajax Morgan. In 2023, researchers created a 3D model of the store, preserving its legacy beneath the Utah desert. In 1959, the U.S. Army built an underground base in Greenland called Camp Century. At first, it was said to be a research station, but years later, secret documents revealed its true purpose. The base was actually part of a hidden plan called Project Iceworm, which aimed to place hundreds of nuclear missiles under the ice ready to strike the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The U.S. used an agreement with Denmark, which controlled Greenland, to build the base, but they never told Denmark about the missile plan. When the truth came out in the 1990s, it created tension between the two countries. Life at Camp Century was tough. About 200 people lived in tunnels buried 26 feet beneath the ice, facing freezing temperatures as low as minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 30 degrees Celsius. They built dormitories, a mess hall, a chapel, and a small theater. A nuclear reactor powered the base initially, but was later replaced by diesel generators. While some formed close bonds, others struggled with isolation and iceworm fever, a mix of claustrophobia and anxiety. The base didn't last long. By 1967, the ice was shifting and making the tunnels unstable, so the U.S. decided to leave. They removed the nuclear reactor, but left behind tons of waste, including diesel fuel, wastewater, and radioactive material, assuming it would stay buried forever. However, climate change is rapidly melting Greenland's ice sheet, and a 2016 study warned the waste could be exposed by 2100 or sooner, posing environmental risks. Since Greenland gained more independence from Denmark in 2009, responsibility for cleanup remains unclear. In 2021, the US and Denmark acknowledged their roles, but no cleanup has begun, leaving Inuit communities demanding urgent action. Yukon was once a lively town in Jacksonville, Florida, where African-American families built homes, churches, and businesses. In the early 1940s, everything changed. The U.S. Navy needed land to expand Naval Air Station Jacksonville during World War II. They took over 200 acres, including Yukon, forcing families to leave their homes. Many were given very little money, sometimes as little as $50, and had only a short time to pack up and go. Some moved to nearby neighborhoods like Durkeeville and La Villa, but their community was never the same. Even though the town disappeared, pieces of it still remain. In 2020, archaeologists used special radar to find old building foundations buried under the ground. They discovered remains of a schoolhouse, a church, and houses. They also found objects from the past like medicine bottles, broken plates, and a tiny toy wagon. These artifacts are now displayed in a museum in Jacksonville. In 2018, a historic marker was placed near the Navy base fence to remind people of Yukon's history. Though the land is still controlled by the Navy and no one is allowed to visit, parts of Yukon's old brick streets can still be seen near the fence, slowly being covered by grass and weeds. Efforts to preserve Yukon's history continue. Urban explorers and photographers document its remains despite Navy warnings against trespassing. Historians and descendants work to share its story, and in 2022, the documentary Lost Yukon used elder interviews and 3D technology to recreate the town. Researchers are also examining how Black communities like Yukon were disproportionately displaced from military bases and federal projects during segregation. And that's a wrap on our journey through these hidden underground cities. There's something thrilling yet eerie about exploring forgotten places, isn't there? But we're not done yet. Stay tuned for the final part of this series, where we'll uncover even more fascinating abandoned places. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss it. See you soon.